Hello, I'm Rick Harrison with Rick Harrison Site Design Studio, and I'm here to tell you a case study that we recently did of Walden of Hastings in Minnesota by Land Equity, a BestLife community, which I'll explain in this video. Let's take a look at the original plan. It was a hand sketch that was submitted to the city. They had 157 lots. We replicated the geometry for an accurate comparison. We have about 14 premium lots that overlook ponds and 21 homes that overlook a several hundred acre ravine. As you can see on the topo, it drops quite a bit. So only 21 of the 157 homes, or 21 of the residents, really have a premium view. The linear feet of public street is nearly 7,000 feet, or nearly 45 foot per unit, which will be important as we go on with this presentation. The environmental density, now this is important. This is every man-made item, and that number at the top means 37.9% is newly man-made elements, and that means it has environmental impact and it has economic impact. So the lower that number, the more efficient the design. So let's take a look at this environmental density. There is no dedicated wide pedestrian system. So when we look at the numbers, that's 1,623 square foot of street pavement per home. It's 1,258 square foot of driveways per home. These homes in Minnesota are going to have 3-car garages, and it's likelihood the driveway will be 30 foot wide all the way to the street. As far as the pedestrian system, you've got some square footage for each of the homes on the form of 5 foot wide public walks parallel to the curve, both sides of the street. Now let's take a look at Walden of Hastings. It has 3 times the residential units, or 467 units. There's 99 of those units, at least, that are going to be overlooking that beautiful ravine, or almost 5 times the units that will enjoy that ravine. That's people, and approximately 50 units that are overlooking the ponds, which is 3.5 times the original plan. And those ponds are very premium views. The linear feet of street drops to 4413, or just 9.45 feet of public street per home, which is 79% less. And the environmental density drops to just 36.7%, which is 3% less, but keep in mind it's 3% less impact on the land, but it's 3 times the units. What this translates to is that green part of the pie. Now the green part of the pie is land, and we're talking about land outside the ravine. We're only talking about the upland. So the green part is the actual organic space that people enjoy. That's higher, yet we have 3 times the people that enjoy that space. And that's a suburban sense of space, not an urban sense of space. When we look at the numbers, the public streets down to 281 square feet, or 83% less. But we have to include the private drives, because the townhomes do have private drives, so that increases it to 559 square foot per unit overall, or 65% less. Driveways are down to 235 square foot per unit, 81% less. Sidewalks, and here's where it gets interesting. We're way down to just 59 square foot per unit on sidewalks. We're meandering the walks so that there's these gorgeous, inviting, beautiful, elegant walks with plenty of room for the street trees to grow, which is 87% less, but we have to include the trail system. And keep in mind, the trails are much wider than the sidewalks. It's our pedestrian highway, and that increases it to 149 square foot, or 65% less than building 5 foot walks each side of that 60 foot wide public street. And yet, as you'll see, our neighborhood is far more walkable and safer. In a more recent study by the NAHB, what are the 5 things that home buyers want? They want walking trails, a suburban neighborhood, parks, they want to be near retail, and they want a walkable neighborhood. Wait a second, that's number 1 and 5, it's the same thing. When you've got a typical suburban design exactly like this one. This is the actual design. We did not do that, so these are real numbers. The city only requires a 5 foot sidewalk each side of the street. You've got a maze-like street pattern, which means you are not easily going to walk through that neighborhood, because you can't even easily drive through the neighborhood, as we'll soon see. Now, when we look at intersections, there are 3 four-way intersections. If a car stops, Cars are looking for other cars. They are not looking for pedestrians. Generally in our planning, we avoid four-way intersections. When we look at Walden, we have wide, safe main trails. We took the city's main trail that would have paralleled a very busy street, and we pulled that trail into our property to have a much more pleasant and open experience and a safer experience. Then we have another trail that cuts through this flat site so we could line them up with trees, and wherever you are in that trail, you'll be able to see the destination of where you're going. And our beautiful meandering walks connects to this pedestrian highway system. It's a truly pedestrian-oriented design. Let's talk about vehicular traffic. A body in motion tends to stay in motion. And when you look at residential speed, whether it be 25 or 30 miles an hour, it takes about this amount of time to get to that 25 mile an hour speed, and then it's going to take about this amount of time to come to a stop. That's about 400 feet. We call that a flow cycle. The more flow cycles, the more time and energy it's going to take for you to get home. So when we look at the typical maze-like street pattern and you want to get through the site, you're not going to be doing this fast. There's only one entry, and you have a lot of these 90-degree turns or four-way intersections. It's going to take an enormous amount of time to get home. And that's very typical about the suburbs. We have cars that we're striving for 50 miles per gallon, but we have subdivisions that get 2 miles per gallon. The EPA and all these organizations never look at the efficiency of a street pattern, but we do. You have multiple hard turn or four-way intersections, and keep in mind this is also your pedestrian system. You just want to get home, so you're going to hit that gas a little bit harder, and you're going to maybe not stop at any intersection. That's how we drive. Now let's take a look at Walden. We have streets that maintain flow. We have 2 entrances, so it's very easy to get home. So no matter how you look at these different areas you live on the site, it's extremely easy to get to. Far less time and energy. No four-way intersections. Where a main trail crosses a main street, we have one-ways, which is much safer, and the meandering walks we pull away from intersections where we can to make it safer to cross through. A truly pedestrian-friendly neighborhood. Let's talk about how suburbs are showcased. The typical development, and we'll take a look at the neighborhood that would have been built, showcases the rears of homes. We all know how beautiful the rear of a single-family home is. It's not very pretty. The best it's going to look is the day it's built, but once all the different fencing goes in and the playgrounds and the boats stored in the backyard, all of that is showcased to the public as they drive past the neighborhood. It's cluttered and it's not very good looking, and it gives the suburbs this cold feel compared to urban areas that fronted streets in the old days. In Walden and most of the neighborhoods we designed, we try to showcase the fronts of homes, which is why we flare the homes at entrances and why we're using a rear-loaded townhome to showcase the development along the street. And now let's talk about transitional suburban zoning. Transitional zoning puts the highest density, cheapest units right at the front door of a master plan community. And then you drive past the cheapest units, the highest density to get to the next level, and then finally the single family homes would have the best views. So where did we put the apartments, the most affordable units? In Walden. We put the most people with the best views, and we put very nice housing at our front door. We flip that transitional zoning 180 degrees so the neighborhood looks better. People in lower price units are driving past higher price units. They feel better about their neighborhood, and it overall increases the value of everything. Pullback. What's pullback? When you line all of your homes along an amenity, like the previous plan shown here, only those units will see the ravine. By pulling away, we're creating view corridors, whether they're to the ponds or to the ravine, and we're significantly increasing the premium locations. That's what pullback does. Now let's talk about view sheds within the homes. If we're increasing the density while also increasing the green space, it's important that we work with the builders and work with the developers so that living spaces in the home and window locations take advantage of these increased views. So all of what I showed you would be typical of any neighborhood that we design. But now let's talk about BestLife neighborhoods. BestLife neighborhoods are unique that they serve multiple markets. We've got the first-time renter with apartments. They can move up to the townhomes or duplexes. Then they can move up to the single-family homes. As they get older, they might choose the active adults. They go all the way to senior care, all in a 54-acre site. Let me talk about a few advantages that there are. On the conventional plan, if one loses their job, gets divorced, or all the other unforeseen things that happen within their life, pretty much they're moving out of the neighborhood. In a BestLife neighborhood, you're going up. The changes that we go through life allows you to stay in that neighborhood as you move up or down the ladder, or as you age, get married, have kids, or grow old. That is a true life cycle community, all in one area. I'll give you a scenario. You're a young couple and you want grandma and grandpa nearby. Well, there's active adult living. Or maybe they're older and they need care. There's senior care living. The kids can go visit the grandparents. That's just one of many, many scenarios that you're not going to get with a conventionally designed subdivision. Now, we do have a lot of developments that might have 3 or 4 single-family housing types, but the diversity of BestLife is very unique, and it takes a special developer like Land Equity to pull that off. So let's talk again about what home buyers really want. They want a suburban neighborhood. And as you can see with BestLife, it has a suburban sense of space. You're not on top of each other. And again, that environmental density chart does not lie. There's at least 3% more green space than the suburban plan, because we intentionally made those suburban homes fairly small compared to what was likely to be built. Multiple unit types are also economically sound because we're using overall less infrastructure for 3 times the density by being very efficient with the geometry. But we're also economically sound for both the residents and the city the development's in because of the diversity of different housing types that will survive market changes far better than a singular product. Home buyers, the number 3 thing is parks. So when you look at Walden versus the conventional plan, where's the park space? Then you look at Walden, and it's functional park space. We didn't have to add that major pedestrian highway through the site. All the amenities are along that trail. It gives a site itself a reason why you want to take a walk and explore. It'll be beautiful everywhere, which is not true with the suburban plan, which showcases parked cars in the driveways and along the streets, while showcasing home rears as one drives or walks through the neighborhood. The amenities will change at every BestLife community because of the scale and the size. The bigger these communities, the more amenities we can put into the development. But even at this small scale, you've got so many more amenities than you would see in a 54-acre suburban development, which has no amenities on the original plan. And the last thing, which is interesting, suburban buyers want is to be near retail. Now let's talk about the reality of this. There are many developments that put retail that are isolated or hard to get to, and that is the kiss of death to the retailer. We will not design a development in such a way that we make it hard to drive to the local market, sacrificing car convenience for pedestrian access. But we do retail in a lot of our neighborhoods, but they're neighborhood marketplaces that have both the automotive convenience and the direct pedestrian connectivity. In many of the sites, if not most of them, it makes no sense to put retail in that development for walking and convenience connectivity if that retail can't survive. So in conclusion, you can't argue with the numbers. These are real numbers. And it's up to you to decide which is better, given the facts that we just presented. And keep in mind, we're using the exact same geometry that's been used for centuries. We're just using it in a very different way. Still within the city's minimums, but a much more efficient design with the models we have been able to create through the technological advancements our firm has made for the land development industry.